the left-hand side, Humans 8-1, and Drake Sasser on the right. Bant Snowblade, undefeated. I think that deck was underrepresented for how good it actually is. Would have expected to see more of that as we were going through the deck list. Drake, though, rewarded for his choice with an unblemished record. Going to start things off with a Noble Hierarch.
Yeah, Stoneforge Mystic is a card that just hasn't had a big representation since its unbanning.
Very true.
I think there was a lot of experimentation with it when it first became unbanned. It never found quite the right home, but maybe this is it.
I think so. I really do. I've been impressed with this deck. Drake just going to pass the turn back, playing a second land. Russell Lee with the ideal start. Aether Vial on turn 1. Picks it up. Thalia coming down with Cavern of Souls back up. Looks like the turn is headed back to Drake. Going to flash in that Ice Fang Coatl. Draw a card. Good to see that card getting some play as well.
Yeah, it's hard for that card to ever be bad, right?
Agreed. Very similar to Baleful Strix, of course, legacy staple. And you had to figure, as Snow propagated throughout the format, Ice Fang Coatl sure to follow.
Yeah, and it's a great home to wear a piece of equipment as well.
Sure. Love that evasive body. So these guys are friends. Went out to dinner with both these folks last night. Now they awkwardly have to show down. Of course, competitors on the SCG Tour all know each other well. Very friendly, cordial environment. Play a lot of Magic against folks. You develop a relationship with them. That relationship's going to get a little testy, though. Oko Thief of Crowns coming down. Looking to play a little defense for Drake Sasser.
Oh.
And we're going to go ahead and elk that Aether Vial. Russell does have the Noble Hierarch to bring down.
And it is funny, that counter stays on the Aether Vial forever, but
not going to do much.
Doesn't mean anything anymore.
Yeah. What if it gets unelked, Craig?
I don't know what that means.
Wait for the next set. It's coming.
The unelking?
Yes. Reverse Oko. Kind of like Reverse Flash. Reverse Flash was always the lamest villain. How do you just reverse the main hero for the villain?
I didn't know there was a Reverse Flash.
There is a Reverse Flash.
This is a DC thing?
Yes.
Yeah. You're a comic book guy.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say. Not like the most devoted comic book guy, but certainly I have my subscriptions to Marvel Unlimited, DC Universe.
Okay, but I would think Reverse Flash, like, I don't know of that. And
okay.
Like, that's not a real mainstream character, right?
Definitely below the mainstream. I agree.
Oh, this is great for Russell.
Yeah, second Cavern, naming Human again. Reflector Mage, going to go ahead and get a bounce on. And that's going to go ahead and answer the Oko. Big swing.
Yeah, when the Oko hits the board, it's just so important to get it off of the board before the opposing player can untap and play around with it and protect it.
Not a lot of humans in this field. Russell Lee continues to find success with the deck, though.
Well, it's interesting bouncing the Coatl there because it's a card that generates so much value, but that just shows the importance of getting the Oko off the board as soon as possible.
Yeah, nothing generates more value than Oko. Willing to let Drake have another card for sure. I watched Russell play a game against Pete Ingram yesterday where Pete played turn 2 Urza. Russell came back to win. I think Todd called it over on about turn 2.
Oh, you're going to just call Todd out like that?
We were all thinking it. I mean, I was thinking the
yeah.
exact same thing, but Russell played a really tight game, found a path forward. Did so through what I would consider one of the defining features of Russell's list, 2 Kessig Malcontents in the list. And you see why that card's important when Oko is able to play defense very well on the ground. Just a way to force through damage, especially against those crowded Urza boards that contain a lot of constructs, a lot of elks.
Yeah, every turn that Oko's on the board is another turn where it's harder and harder to attack the opponent. So that additional reach from the Malcontents, circumventing the attack step, super important.
Yeah, I agree with you. Also 3 Charming Prince in Russell Lee's deck. to say nothing of the Phantasmal Image. So you start shading those Malcontents together, you can produce a lot of damage without having to get into combat. So here is an attack from Russell Lee, Reflector Mage, as well as the Elt Ether Vial swinging in. Looks like Drake has a response. Ice Fang Coatl as expected.
Yeah, no surprise there.
Does have Death Touch active with 3 snow lands. And that means it's ready to block the Elk.
And it looked like Drake had a lot of Path to Exiles in his hand. I expect the first one to get Thalia off of the board, freeing up his mana to efficiently cast other spells.
Makes sense to me. There's another Noble Hierarch. And I do believe I see Kessig Malcontents in Russell's hand. That is going to come down. And it's set to do 5 right now. Let's see if Drake wants to respond. Gonna go ahead and take a read of that card. There is going to be a Path to Exile on Thalia. As you expected, Craig. Going to go ahead and look for the 1 basic land in the entire deck. So Future Path's just going to be hard exile removal. Look real strong against Russell Lee. There you see Kessig Malcontents. 3/1 body. When it enters the battlefield, though, deals damage to target player equal to the number of humans you control. Damage numbers on this can get out of control real quick. Drake looks pretty comfortable at 13, but that could change in a hurry.
Yeah, I was going to say, I thought this was an important turn for Drake to really get something on the board. Like a Stoneforge Mystic, searching up a Batterskull.
Sure.
Maybe a big Planeswalker, something significant, because to me, Russell untapping with all of this mana available and not really looking at a whole lot on the other side of the board gives him an opportunity to just really establish complete control over the game and just have a wide, aggressive board presence.
It looks like the play is going to be attack with just Reflector Mage. Of course, getting 2 Exalted triggers from the Noble Hierarchs. Drake does have the Path to Exile. As I mentioned, that's just going to be a clean removal spell at this point. No more basics left for Russell. Now Russell has to decide what to do post-combat. Cavern, not as big a weapon against this deck as you would expect. There are still Spell Quellers able to do their thing. Here's that Charming Prince.
Love it.
Yeah, I think this card is quite powerful in Humans. There was some debate when this started showing up. Russell going to go ahead and bottom 2. Gives Drake a little peek. You'd all surprised Russell didn't choose to force through a little bit of damage there, blinking the Kessig Malcontents.
Yeah, I'm actually quite surprised.
How about a 3rd Noble Hierarch for Drake Sasser? Have a feeling that's not what he was looking for. I think his hand is just loaded with removal, though. I'm pretty sure I see another Path to Exile in hand.
That's awkward when the opposing board has a bunch of Noble Hierarchs.
Every threat is good.
Yeah, this 2/2 is actually a 4/4 attacker, which means you have to deal with it. And then the next 2/2 or 3/1 or whatever the case may be is going to be a big attacker, and you have to deal with that one.
Yeah, and there you see Path to Exile on the Charming Prince. Russell mimes a little shuffling there.
Drake has the 4th path all rolled up.
Wow. I mean, he's got to have something in his hand. He's not making land drops.
Yep.
He's not doing anything else. I'm sure Russell has put him on a removal-heavy hand at this point. Still 3 cards in hand for Russell. Curious what they are. Phantasmal Image has my bet.
I would guess there's a Reflector Mage in there. Just I think Russell was considering, hey, do I need this body on the board to keep attacking, or do I worry about the next thing that Drake plays where I'm going to play the Reflector Mage then?
How about a Meddling Mage? Courtesy of Cavernous Souls, that makes sense. There's that Spell Queller we talked about. Time for a Kessig Malcontent's attack. One card left in hand. It's Path to Exile. Looks like that's going to go ahead and clean up those Kessig Malcontents. Now, though, Drake kind of at the mercy of the top of the deck.
He is, but I like the decisiveness where, he's not going to take damage for 2 or 3 attacks, and then when he has to Path to Exile, he's going to do it. He's saying, I'll do it right now because if I wait 2 turns, I'm going to have to do it anyway. I might as well save that life.
Makes sense to me. Meanwhile, Unclaimed Territory comes down. Naming Illusion is a Phantasmal Image in Russell's hand. Unfortunately, not much left to copy at this point.
Yeah.
And here's a play for Drake off the top. Oh, that's a nice one. Sword of Feast and Famine. Not bad. Not bad, Drake.
Well, and this makes it a 3-turn clock as well.
Yep. How about 7? Jeez. Drake going to get all his mana back. Not that he has anything to do with it. Russell discards another land. And the tides have turned very quickly. Russell knows this has to be a good one. Was it? No. Nope, not a good one.
Yeah, it's looking real bad for Russell, but I still feel like he played this game quite well.
Vithalia's Lieutenant seems okay here with Phantasmal Image in hand. Okay, we got a little stew going.
Well, and Drake didn't use his extra mana to move around the sword when he could have.
Right. Maybe missing a block here.
Yeah, he's taking extra damage when he could have just had that sword on.
This is actually twice I've seen Drake fail to move the sword in a defensive posture.
See, and I think that Drake probably didn't play in limited formats where equipment was ubiquitous, because that's one of those lines that you play a lot and it becomes ingrained.
Right. I mean, especially, there's not even anything to bluff at this point. You have no cards in hand. It's just strictly upside. Now we got it. Okay. Clean that up.
Yeah. So going back to the Charming Prince play, Russell sniffed out the Path to Exiles, where he was saying, I could try to blink this.
But I'll get nothing.
But, if you're sitting on a path, you're just going to kill it. So it was more important to dig for extra cards than force the path at that point.
Yeah, I think Russell had a pretty live draw step here, but he's got a face on like he didn't quite hit. Another Thalia's Lieutenant? Is that enough? I don't think so. We got a lot of blockers.
Yeah, a lot of blockers on the other side.
Can you force enough blocks that Spell Queller is no longer lethal? Russell says, I'm not going to figure it out. You figure it out. Free block on this Hierarch. A couple more in front.
Yeah.
And that's still lethal. Drake going to take a little damage here. Looks like 6 all day. Going to survive at 3 life. Come back, swing for lethal with the Spell Queller. And that's going to get the scoop. And Drake Sasser up a game against Russell Lee. Interesting little match there. Well, time to head to the sideboards. I think both players have some good upgrades here. Why don't we start over on Russell Lee's side? There you see 3 Dismember, 3 Mirren Crusader, 2 Knight of Autumn, 2 Deputy of Detention, 2 Phyrexian Revoker, an Auriok Champion, Kambal, Consul of Allocation, and finally a Plague Engineer. Craig, if you're sitting in Russell's seat, what are you going to do here?
So a lot of these cards are tempting, but I think it's important for Russell just to pick the few that are the most important and not over sideboard here, because he still needs to maintain all of these human synergies that are necessary for his deck to accumulate that advantage.
Sure.
So I look at this and I'm like, oh, Dismember, I kind of like that against what Drake is doing, killing Spell Quellers and things of the like. That's tempting. Knight of Autumn is the same thing, where it's like, oh, I can kill an equipment. It comes down as the large body. If that's not the case, like, a flexible card like that. But I think it's tempting, but you have to be careful about not over sideboarding here. Deputy of Detention, same thing. It's a super versatile card that'll answer a lot of threats, but does it help you execute your game plan enough along the way? And the Bant Snowblade deck is pretty unique in that it has such a mix of offense and defense. The Planeswalkers, the equipment, the creatures, the counter spells, that it's hard to just pick one angle and attack it from that angle.
Yeah, I'm not sure which path I would go down. As you mentioned, all these cards have merit. Russell has to decide which are the strongest, and you can't just go too hard. Otherwise, you have no aggression in your deck. You're relying on the human synergies to get those Champion of the Parish, to get Thalia's Lieutenant.
Well, and every now and then your mana just gets jammed up as well because, a lot of your lands you have to pick humans in order to cast your human spells.
Absolutely.
And you're sideboarding in non-human creatures. It can be problematic.
Yeah, Russell knows this deck well, though. I'm sure he's got a plan for this matchup. Meanwhile, over on Drake Sasser's side, we are looking at 3 Ashiok Dreamrender, 2 Mystical Dispute, 2 Veil of Summer. Here's where the good stuff starts happening. 2 On Thin Ice, 2 Winds of Abandon, 2 Dismember, 1 Disdainful Stroke, and a Vendilion Click. I'm assuming we're just going straight removal spells here for Drake.
Yeah, we commented yesterday how we thought this sideboard was almost overboard for Drake. But in a matchup like this, where you can bring in the On Thin Ice, the Winds of Abandon, the Dismembers, have this mix of efficient removal that's sorcery and instant speed, and then something like Winds of Abandon, which has some utility on the early turns, and later in the game can just be a complete one-sided Wrath of God blowout. I really like all of these cards, and these mixed in with his Planeswalkers, where he's saying, I can 1-for-1 you over and over and over, and then recoup that card advantage later through my Planeswalkers, is a great strategy against the human stack.
Yeah, and I think Drake, having gotten game 1, you have to really like his position in this matchup. And with a strong start to the second tournament of the year, you also have to really like his position in the Player of the Year race, off to a really strong start. And of course, a big part of that are IQs. You want to be heading to those IQs, make sure you're qualified for the Invitational, picking up those crucial points along the way. How about a little cash too, $1,000 to the top 8. And of course, you get that beautiful playmat. Unexpected View, is that what we're calling this?
Yep.
You have no idea if that's correct. I can feel it in your soul, but I think that is correct.
I thought it was the Bony Horse. And
right, Bony Horse.
And the Maiden.
Lady riding it with Apple. That is a much more catchy name. I will propose that one in the next meeting.
That's not the description you sent over to the art department at SCG?
It was. I'm surprised how literally they took me. I wanted them to be more, impressionistic about it, but ultimately this is what we got, and it's a beautiful playmat. I'm happy you'll have your chance to get it at the IQ.
I love the IQs.
Yeah, they're great. I wish they were more closer to me. Living in Seattle, it's unfortunate I don't really get to participate. But on the East Coast, hit those up.
Yeah, having a one-day competitive event for a real prize pool that I can easily travel to and be home in the evening.
Sounds great.
Yeah, just so convenient.
Great start here from Russell Lee. Turn 1 Noble Hierarch into Mantis Rider. Drake Sasser also with the turn 1 Noble Hierarch. Very important to accelerate your mana. In Modern, basically every deck does it. If not, you're probably not viable.
APT.
Actions per turn. Mana a big part of that equation, for sure.
Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons we've seen such a drop-off in the Jund decks.
Yeah.
Like, they still have the tools to answer almost everything that the format is doing, but against a lot of the unfair decks, they just can't keep pace.
Very true. Craig advocating for a Deathrite Shaman unban. Controversial opinion, Craig.
That is not what I said.
That's what I heard. Stoneforge Mystic coming down from Drake Sasser. Got to go ahead and grab a Batterskull. A nice get when Russell's on a real aggressive start here.
You love, these deep theological discussions on what should be banned or unbanned.
Sometimes. I think they can be interesting. I have certainly had these conversations way too much lately. I like them when they come up very rarely.
Tweet at Brian Go.
Oh, my God.
And make sure you tag at Cedric A. Phillips. Our boss always likes to know what's going on in Magic conversations.
Right. Keep his finger on the pulse of the people. Russell Lee getting back in with Mantis Rider, but Drake Sasser at the ready. Path to Exile. And as we mentioned, this is just grabbing one land. And now those Winds of Abandon, Path to Exile, just hard removal spells for Drake Sasser. Great position to be in.
Yeah, we see a lot of human decks play two basics sometimes, but to me, even getting the second basic, does that matter as the game plays out?
Well, humans can occasionally be choked on its mana. It's why it plays so many accelerants, Ether Vial. It really starts to hum when it can cast multiple spells per turn.
Yeah.
Leverage its mana base and get card advantage from it with the Horizon lands.
Yeah, I just think at the point that you get a second land from a second Path to Exile on the opposing side, it might be too late. You might be past that point where you're double dropping creatures.
Here's an interesting play from Russell Lee. Brought in the Mirren Crusaders from the sideboard. It's going to look real good against Batterskull, I'll tell you that much. Attacks through Icefang Coatl very easily.
Yeah, protection from black, protection from green.
Can't be touched by Oko. A lot of upside to Mirren Crusader in this matchup. Now still, very vulnerable to the white removal.
Yeah, I was going to say, succumbs to all the white removal. If the Stoneforge Mystic ends up wearing the Batterskull, it's a pretty awkward spot to be in.
Sure. Also effectively blocked by a Spell Queller.
Yep, trades there. Although right now it'll be larger when it attacks from the Noble Hierarch.
Yeah, Hierarch helps that problem. Looks like Russell wants to make a pre-combat play here.
But also, the Batterskull is going to come down on the opposing side. It has lifelink. You're not getting very far ahead in that race.
Yeah, you're playing defense, and that's almost certainly where you don't want to be. Here's a Phantasmal Image from Russell Lee. Drake Sasser ready with the Spell Queller. Does mean a Batterskull reprieve. Not going to see that one this turn. Does Russell Lee have a nice follow-up here? Dahlia's Lieutenant.
Yeah,
Okay.
I like this. This is a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
You kept the lifelinker off of the board for another turn.
Yeah, this is offering up 8 points of damage to Drake Sasser. No good blocks.
I think Drake's thinking about just chump blocking here.
He's reaching for the life pad. Looks like he is going to take it. Chump blocking had to be a consideration. Ultimately going to pass on it, though. It's tough to give up your Stoneforge Mystic. Can't give up your Phantasmal Image at that point. Or excuse me, you can't give up your Spell Queller because it would unlock Phantasmal Image.
Yeah, I think if it was a situation where Drake would be able to trade with the Mirren Crusader, he'd happily put the Phantasmal Image back on the board. But the chump block into now staring at multiple Mirren Crusaders doesn't seem like a good place to be.
Yeah. Looks like Drake looking to get on the beatdown plan. Spell Queller soars in, 3 points of damage, headed Russell Lee's way. What's the follow-up from Sasser? Another Stoneforge Mystic.
Okay.
Now we're unlocking a bunch of equipment.
Yeah, I was going to say the Mirren Crusader is getting so big that, and Drake's life is getting so low that the Batterskull potentially wasn't a great answer, but once you start piling more and more equipment onto one lifelinking creature, it's hard to outrace that.
Absolutely is. And Russell Lee, without any cards in hand, does have a Canopy land on the battlefield. Oh, he had a few left. Okay.
Yeah, yep.
He just lays his cards down as he plays. Smart. Give up no information. Looks like maybe a Thalia in hand for Russell. So an interesting spot here. We know there's equipment coming down from Drake Sasser.
Yeah, and the single attack makes those Stoneforge Mystics just such easy chump blockers at this point.
I would expect Stoneforge to hop in the way here. There we go. Gonna go ahead and throw that one in the bin. There's the Thalia. Another land for Russell. Another play available, Plague Engineer. Okay. Gonna go ahead and use some Hierarch mana. It now resolves, and it is in fact going to name something that kills the Noble Hierarch. Name's human. Drake gonna go ahead and use that mana to bring down the Batterskull.
Yeah, I'm surprised to see the Plague Engineer here.
Well, clean up Icefang Quaddle, clean up Hierarch. There are some 1 toughness things in the deck for sure.
It doesn't have the human synergies.
Right.
And it's a little slow to try to answer those things. Like the Quaddle is a flash creature that'll often just trade in combat right away.
Trade, yeah. You could see some potential strong starts where opponent leads on Noble Hierarch and you're able to just immediately answer, stunting their mana growth. But seems like an odd thing to bank on in this matchup. Not really what the matchup's about, maybe. It was decent here. Certainly had an immediate effect on the battlefield. I just don't know how much constricting Drake's mana at this point is actually going to matter. Humans deck, of course, very adept at creating pressure in both wide and single threat forms. Dahlia's Lieutenant Great Gore in wide, things like Mirren Crusader, really effective. Single threats, Mantis Rider.
Yeah, I mean, that Path to Exile out of Drake was just so important to this game.
I see an Oko in hand and a bunch of lands for Drake. Oko, Sword of Feast and Famine, 2 lands is my read on Drake's hand. Yes. Confirmed. Oko not great against this battlefield.
Not great. I actually think it's not terrible either. Drake can start by just attacking with his Germ token.
Mm-hmm.
And if it trades with something, like the Plague Engineer, great. If it doesn't, all right, you gain your 4 life and you still have this big body on defense. You can deploy your Oko, and your other Stoneforge Mystic is still back as a great chump blocker.
Drake taking his time on this turn. This is a tough one, for sure. Key turn of the game. Looks like Oko is step 1 of Drake's plan. It's going to come down 4 loyalty. Sure to uptick. Going to 5.
All right. Yeah.
Germ token.
I'm not sure I like this line. I guess you're almost forcing Russell to trade the Plague Engineer at this point. You're saying I'm going to get this huge buff to my life total.
Yeah.
But then you're really committing your mana to redeploying this Batterskull on the next turn.
Yeah, Drake gonna go up to 12. Germ token is gone, and the turn passes back to Russell Lee. Russell going to start by cracking that Horizon Canopy. Would love to find a way to threaten lethal here. Not quite there yet. Crack another Horizon Canopy. Really wants to force a chump. Champion of the Parish not going to do it. Russell's going to do some blocks for his opponent here.
Yeah, it's always funny when people line up the opposing blocks. I always wonder if someone will try to, like, next level, like, you know, intentionally line up some
bad blocks.
Yeah, just the not horrible blocks where it's so obvious, but just like, yeah, one mediocre decision. This is what he'll have to do, right?
If Russell attacks with everyone, he does force a block. It doesn't have to be a bad block, though.
Yeah, I think the Stoneforge Mystic is almost always going to chump block the Mirror Crusader. And then it's a question of, does Russell want to let the Spell Queller eat his next best creature kind of a thing?
It seems like no to me. I mean, these two attacks make a bit more sense.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Oh, wow. All right, hold on.
Yeah, there's a whole conversation here.
I just had a conversation off camera. Drake's life total is correct. He is at 5 because there's something going on with layers and elking the Batterskull token that it has lost lifelink because it loses all abilities when it becomes an elk. The ability was instilled at the time of equipment.
Yes.
Did you at all intuit? I had no idea that he was not going to gain life there.
I forgot that was the case 100% because it's so strange, but that is the way that it's supposed to work.
Okay. Today I learned. I would not have expected that whatsoever. So my analysis of that battlefield was entirely wrong.
Yeah, we both thought that he was going to gain a boatload of life there.
I have to think he thought that too.
Yeah, it's very likely that Drake thought he was going to.
I mean, there's no way you make that play otherwise. So
correct.
Surprising information. Boy, I love Oko. It's just such a good card.
It works exactly the way you would think it would.
There's nothing confusing about it at all. Well, now Drake has to find a way to survive under these new circumstances, and it's much harder.
Yeah, and I can't imagine. To me, he has to equip the Batterskull here, right? Like,
seems like he's in need of the life. So Drake going to fall to 1 on this fetch. I'm kind of dumbstruck right now, Craig. You see a shake of the head from Drake. I'm with you, Drake. Don't feel too bad.
All right, let's not elk this thing.
Yeah, good idea. And the Spell Queller is going to go ahead and attack. Pad Drake's life total. This is going to actually lifelink. Going to go ahead and plus on Oko.
Getting the food.
Yeah, a little food action. Still tremendous pressure headed Drake's way.
Yeah, I'm like, just turn the Mirror Crusader into an elk, right?
You would love to.
Nope, can't do that.
Here comes Noble Hierarch, pumps the team a little bit more. Big lifelinker on Drake's side. 6-7 Spell Queller. Vigilant as well. Definitely an onus to force some damage through. Gonna do it via Mirror Crusader. Double exalted. That's a big one.
So it's a 5-4, correct? That's what we're looking at here?
5-5.
5-5.
5-5.
So it's going to trade with the Spell Queller.
It's going to trade. Life for Drake as well.
Life for Drake, but...
Phantasmal Image.
Yeah, there's so many juicy targets now for the Phantasmal Image. They'll just copy the Lieutenant and make this board massive.
Very wide battlefield. Here comes Image. Gonna copy that Thalia's Lieutenant. Get your dice ready. Start spinning them.
You see what he drew?
Did he draw Winds of Abandon?
Yeah, he did.
Oh, my God.
Wow. And he was like, I'll play this. Wait.
The perfect draw.
Can't play it because of Thalia. Got to elk the Thalia, but that doesn't matter.
Who cares?
Yeah.
Who cares? What a rip for Drake Sasser. And that is going to
Wow.
get the handshake from Russell Lee. 2-0.
And that's one of the cards we were talking about out of the board early on in the game. Nice, efficient